everybody, and welcome back to Novels and Nightcaps, the podcast where we read, drink, and ramble. My name is Gabe.
And I'm Nor.
And today we're covering Book 2 in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy, The Well of Ascension. Last time we talked about Mistborn, The Final Empire, so if you haven't listened to that one yet, definitely go check it out before we're jumping in here. And just to get it out of the way early, we'll give our first impressions and overall ratings of The Well of Ascension before we get into spoilers. But as always, before we dive in, Nor, what are you drinking?
I think you're going to like this one. Today, I am drinking from the Well of Ascension.
I enjoy that thoroughly.
Not really, because this is milk, and I am lactose intolerant. No, actually, I made myself a little vial of copper, which is actually just a mezcalita, which is orange juice and mezcal. And I got this nice little vial thingy that looks like something Vin would have by her side.
I like the audio. I feel like you can hear that it's in a container, the ice and everything. That's really good. I very much enjoy that. That's very creative. I gotta say, I think that's my favorite one you've made yet. However, I would have also really enjoyed if you just drank milk out of a bowl the entire just like slurped out of a bowl the entire time.
Not today. Maybe next time.
The Well of Ascension. Man, dude, that is true ascension. That is true ascension right there. A couple hours on the toilet. Dang, that's what joy. What joy. So I can probably assume while you did that, I mean, obviously the vial, the Alamancy, it tracks. Mine is a little bit more interpretive. I wasn't as creative as you, I think, this time around. I had to draw a few strings where honestly there weren't very many, and I was mostly looking at what ingredients I had and making it up on the spot. So I made a well, it's a sour, to say the least. You can kind of tell if you were looking at it. There's lemons in it, and it's very foamy, as a sour typically is. But it's a soju sour. So soju is a Korean beverage. I chose it because number one, we had some. Number two, Brandon Sanderson loves Korea. So I'm like, what better way to represent Brandon Sanderson than get, South Korea's most popular spirit? So since it's a spirit, I thought I could probably use that in a different cocktail. It's very sweet, though. I used a peach soju. So it's very sweet, and it really contrasts nicely with the sour lemon that goes into a sour. And I don't know if this is a real recipe. I completely made it up, and it is utterly delicious. It doesn't really taste like there's much alcohol in it, so I added an ounce of gin. So it's 2 ounces of soju, an ounce of gin, 1 lemon squeezed out, the egg whites, and simple syrup. I think I did half an ounce of simple syrup. So I dry shaked it first to get it all nice and foamy, then added ice in there, shook that up, double strained it, and so it gets nice and silky smooth. It's very creamy. You can see the foam up there. And my reason behind this, as I've tried to justify it, is that we have a lot of tension, character tension in this book, as there are many books, right? But I think especially in The Well of Ascension, Vin, our protagonist, and I mean, well, really all of our characters have this central kind of rubbing point of which direction do they choose. I don't want to say too much because I think we kind of get into spoilers if I explain what exactly that tension is, but we have a little bit of sweet, a little bit of sour. And I think that in the end, she figures out a way to play nice with one another, right? But anyways, that was my choice. It's delicious. Nor, how is your drink? Is it good?
As always, it's mezcal, and I don't really know how to feel about it.
Didn't you literally say last episode that you are not going to do anything with mezcal this year?
You see, sometimes we make choices that we have to make for the greater good or for the greater good of the podcast. And
for the good of the podcast.
I'm also on the same boat as you. I was looking for what I had, and what I have is mezcal. So,
hey, but that's a very cute container. Very, very cute container.
Thank you. We are running out of mezcal, though, so sooner rather than later, there will be no more mezcal.
Oh, well, I'm glad you enjoy it. Yeah, mine is delicious. Always the Well of Ascension. I love sours. Yeah, there's always the Well of Ascension, just in case you get extra thirsty during the podcast. Who needs water when you can drink from the Well of Ascension? But we should probably get started with a general summary before we dive into our overall impressions and overall score of the book. So, Nor, can you give us a little bit of a summary? This will include spoilers for book 1, which makes sense because we're on book 2. So if you haven't read The Final Empire, you should probably leave. I'm not sure if this would make much sense. Or if you already know all the spoilers for the Final Empire and you're here for a good time, you're welcome to tag along and hopefully it makes sense to you. But nor we're coming right off the back of the first one, right? So where are we with all of our characters at the start of this book?
Right. So, just a quick recap of book 1 at the very end. Then our protagonist defeats the Lord Ruler. And so it seems as though it's happily ever after. The bad guy has been vanquished, the people are free, and our hero learned a little something about trust, right? And learning to trust in others, learning to trust in herself. And yet, there's a lot of chaos that follows this happily ever after. You killed the emperor, you killed the god of this world. What happens next? That is the main question that this book is asking. It follows our protagonist and the rest of Kelsier's crew a year, I believe, after the events of the Final Empire. I think they call it the collapse in the world, right? The collapse of the Lord Ruler and his final empire. It's been a year. Ellen has become the king of Luthadel, which is the main city, the power point of the planet. I forget the name. I think it's Scadrial.
Yeah. Sounds right. That sounds correct.
Tensions are really high. The noblemen are fighting. They're all warring against each other. They all want to take the city of Luthadel, right? The city of the Lord Ruler. Whoever holds this city is essentially the next emperor. Besides, they're also looking for the atium, which is, the most valuable elementic metal in this world that we know of, and the most valuable resource in this world. So there's a lot of different armies sort of camping out of Luthadel. Elend is really struggling with his new kingdom. He's trying to rule the way he always dreamt of. He's a philosopher at heart, so he has all these ideals, and he's very optimistic and idealistic, and he really wants to make this work, right? There's a whole assembly here, which is not really doing particularly well. The people are stressed, lots of chaos. And as for Vin, she is sort of once again dealing with her own identity. She doesn't really know if she belongs besides Ellen, right? She was a thief this whole time, just like the rest of Kelsey's crew, and then all of a sudden they're put in this position of power and almost holy reverence, right? They're following Kelsey's death. He becomes a sort of godlike figure, a messiah, a martyr. There's a whole church dedicated to him, and by extension, Vin and the crew. And so, just a lot of identity struggles, not to mention the fact that Vin also hears this thumping in the distance. It's really loud. The mist seems to be doing something, it doesn't seem to go away a
Yeah.
day. And just a lot of tension overall.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I will say that is one thing that I very much appreciated compared to the first book. Not that the first book was too simple, not at all, but I appreciated how many different plot lines and tensions were going on in this book. So if the Final Empire left you feeling like it just wasn't very complex, you get a lot more complexity here. It expands a lot more as a sequel really should. I think it accomplishes that quite well in not only adding more characters to the cast, but fleshing out who's already there and expanding, I would say the amount of problems that can occur when you take on a much more administrative and like higher level role in an empire, because toppling it seemed like the easy part, and now so many more things can go wrong and there are so many more people to please or displease, and so it does that very, very well. So we should probably give our overall ratings. That was a fantastic, like, brief premise, and I'm not gonna lie, if you like the first one, you'll like this one. It's a pretty straight up, easy vote yes. If you're watching this and you enjoyed The Final Empire, then you're going to enjoy this. It is much of the same in a good way. It doesn't ruin the first one, for example. So yeah, Nora, what is your like overall rating for the book?
Yeah, like you said, it is a really worthy successor of The Final Empire. It's a really strong sequel, really strong. It really expands on the characters a lot more. I give it a thumbs up. I think it's great. I actually liked it a little bit more than I did The Final Empire. I enjoyed the character exploration and how we learn a whole lot more about Kelsey's crew and Elend and sort of the whole prophecy and the deepness and all the lore, all the good stuff, all the juicy stuff, even though it remained a big mystery for a majority of the book. But yeah, I think it's a great sequel. It does a lot of wonders for the characters. It has a very different style. It almost feels like nothing is happening chapter by chapter because the characters are so deeply kind of lost in their own struggles, and yet it all starts building up near the end in classic Sanderson fashion, you know? I think you texted me this a few days ago when you were reading the ending, and you're like, the last 200
This
pages are
dude,
crazy packed, and,
the
yeah,
Sanderlanche hits hard in this book. I mean, just like they do in every book. I think that the Sanderlanche hit harder in this one than it did the previous one. And we'll talk about that, of course, in a few moments here. But now, I honestly, I think you're right. So my total score, I believe, is lower than what I gave the first one, but my enjoyment of it is a little higher, which I know is contradictory, and I don't really have a good defense for it. But but I gave it an 8.45. So I mean, pretty much the same score, right? We're very much on the same page. I enjoyed it just as much, if not more, than the Final Empire. For I mean, all of the reasons that you said, pretty much. I enjoyed all that. I liked the plot significantly more. I liked how clean the first one is, but this is a bit more along the lines of what I enjoy reading. There's a lot more political intrigue happening here and a little bit more mysteries going on. And don't get me wrong, the first one has a very like clear set goal that is extremely satisfying to watch it be achieved. Yet I kind of knew they were going to succeed. It just felt like there was not much of another way for it to happen. Like I know there was a trilogy, so obviously they have to succeed somewhere. I had no idea where this was going. So I was very much excited to see where it was going. There was a few areas that I felt not necessarily let down, but I wanted to see be a bit more um intense, but we'll talk about that in a few moments. So 8.45, 100% recommend it. I cannot wait to see where the series goes because from what I've seen online, I have no spoilers whatsoever, but from what I've seen online, book 3 is even better. So I'm really, 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 really looking forward to seeing how this trilogy concludes because honestly, at this point, I'm like, how do you wrap this up in a book? In one book? I mean, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll see what happens. So are there any other thoughts before we dive into the spoiler section? Because I mean, again, as we said, who would enjoy this book? The person who enjoyed the first one. If you read the first one and you're here for more, you'll enjoy it. So it's as straightforward as that. Don't skip to this one. You're not gonna know what's going on if you just skip the first book. So read the first one.
it really is a good sequel.
I mean, like I've been thinking a lot about like how you write a trilogy, like how you plan a trilogy out, how you create a satisfying sequel. Because a lot of times your first book is great, and your last book, if you stick the landing, is great. But that middle territory can be kind of muddled, and this is not muddy to me. It did not feel muddy whatsoever. And it was very much a satisfying read, and it was its own story. It had its own arcs. The characters are in vastly different places at the end of the story compared to the beginning. Just like at the beginning of Final Empire, the characters change significantly at the end. I mean, you get the same thing here. There's significant growth in pretty much everybody, and that's a good thing. That's how you write characters. That's how you write a story. So you get that here. But all right, we should probably dive into some spoilers. So, spoiler territory coming up in three, two, one. All right, we should probably start with characters. Nor, you go ahead and start us off. You have the slightly higher score here. What did you give characters?
Yeah. Characters, I think, honestly, step up from the first book. The characters were a lot more nuanced, a lot messier here. I like the way you described the first book as like simple, tight, clear objective. I think the same applies with the characters in that book. The characters were very simple, complex enough where I related to them and I felt for them and they felt relatable and enticing to follow. but simple nonetheless. I mean, the whole theme of the first book is just trust, and it's a really simple theme, at least in the first book.
Mhm.
In the second book, things change a little bit. Again, our characters were thieves. Now they are administrators in this empire or kingdom, budding kingdom, really, because it's just getting started and it's about to fall.
Yeah,
There's
it's
a lot
basically
of
just one city anyways. Like, they have a city
yeah,
and I guess some surrounding territory. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. And there's a lot of dissonance with these characters because of where they came from, their background, as thieves, and it was just really interesting seeing all that unfold. Vin, in particular, was exciting. Just having her be a full-fledged Mistborn. I really enjoyed the whole knife metaphor, how she is a knife and she's being used by all these people. She doesn't really see it as being used, but then you have Zane, who really interesting character, who's trying to like lure her to this idea of, we're Mistborn. We don't really relate to these people. They can't relate to us. We are separate. Kind of luring her away from everything she's come to trust and come to love. And then you have Ellen, who is a really, really interesting character, a lot more fleshed out than the first book. I didn't care for him in the first book. He just felt like a random love interest. In this book, though, his struggles with trying to be a king and maintaining his integrity, there were so many opportunities for him to take the easy way out, and yet he is too kind-hearted and too
Good
noble
dude. He's so good.
to not sacrifice his morals. Exactly, yeah. So,
Oh my gosh,
really
he is
great.
everything you want from a leader. I feel like there's not many times you truly get like an Ellen type character in a book, despite how obvious their type may seem. I feel like we don't really ever get that. You either get the leader who is very good but does what needs to be done in order to be powerful and to succeed. Like that's a ruler type. And then you get, the bad rulers like plenty of times, the cruel ones, the inept ones. And I think you could have easily it would have been quite easy to write Elland into a character that his ideals kind of cloud his judgment and that leads him to fail. But he finds a sort of middle ground here, which I think is really good, where his judgment is not clouded. Like he's able to identify that you can hold your values, you can hold them high, yet you can also make practical, just decisions. And the area, I mean, it's a push and pull. He has to figure out the areas where he's willing to give a little bit. And I mean, you see that in the end, right? Like, doesn't he straight up just be like, all right, I guess I'm king? Like he becomes king. Isn't that correct?
Emperor, yeah.
Yeah, emperor, which I guess isn't technically his choice, but he takes the mantle nonetheless, which I really did appreciate that nuance there because it would have been easy also for him to be like, I won't be emperor and be a little annoying about it. I liked Ellen in the first book, honestly, despite his kind of shoehorned love interest part. Like I believed the love part. I really did. But I think you're right. It felt random. Yet despite that, I still really liked what we got from his character, especially because we got some perspective chapters that did wonders for his character in the first book. And this just takes that and cranks it to 10. He was by far my favorite character in this book. I liked Vin as well. I should probably give my rating here. It's slightly lower than yours. It's 8.5. And my real reasoning for that is really it would have been a 9 or a 9.5 if Elend died. And I don't know if that's really a plot choice. To me, it felt more like a character thing because it puts him in a place where now he has the powers. And I always felt that the strength of his character was not having powers. That felt like what made him so unique and special was the fact that he wasn't gifted like everybody else. Yet, despite that fact, he was still able to make a difference and be a good man. And that's what made him partly so special, right? Is he didn't have the allomancy. He's just like one of us, yet he is able to be more. And so I felt like the ending where he is all of a sudden now an allomancer and he survived. I don't know. That it felt like it betrayed it a little bit. That's honestly one of my biggest gripes with the book was that specific moment, because I was like, when Ellen was gonna die, I'm like, that's baller. Like, that's such a, like, I mean, the first book he kills Kelsier, this one he's killing Ellen. Like, truly, Vin is going to be alone. She's gonna have to deal with the weight of the fact that everybody she's close to seems to die because of her, you know? And I mean, I guess Kelsier didn't die because of her, but you know, I was really interested to see where that would go. Yet, of course, it took a little bit more of a hopeful route, which I'm sure it's really good in the third one. So I'm not completely like throwing out book 3 as a result of that. But it was dissatisfying for me. But all the other characters, yeah. The only other character that I wanted to see more of was Breeze. I was really interested by his act of cowardice in the end. Yet I would have liked maybe a little bit more of a build up to that. There is some build up, but I guess he was kind of under the radar for me, and his moment of cowardice felt really influential. And I didn't think that we got to explore it fully. Sazed, on the other hand, was so good. I loved Sazed in this book, and it was significantly better than the first book. He was good in the first book, but this one is like, I mean, he loses his faith. That's interesting. That's such an interesting concept. Yet he becomes so much more human in this one than the last one. He felt kind of like a robot in book 1 a little bit, like a good robot, like Baymax kind of. Whereas in this one, he really becomes fleshed out. And dude, this is totally plot, but that scene where he goes beast mode and like holds the gate is so epic. It's so sick. That was so sick. And he's like, I'm not a warrior. That was so cool. That was so cool. I was so hyped. I literally was like, dude, I was so hyped. Oh my gosh. Anyways, that's my rough take on characters, my criticisms, but also I mean, an 8.5 is very good. I very much enjoyed it. I think he did a fantastic job with the characters, and there was literally like 2 points that I had gripes about. So, I mean, in the span of things, it's nothing. I very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, I think you once again hit the nail on it. It really does wonders for both Ellen and Sazed. They are a lot more nuanced, a lot more complex, no longer as one-dimensional as they were in the first book. You know, in the first book, they very clearly serve a purpose in relation to Vin, but they don't really stand out on their own. Here, they are their own characters facing their own struggles. Sazed's chapters were some of my favorites just because of the whole faith and purpose thing and responsibility. And I accidentally spoiled myself
No,
for the next book because I
what?
thought I made a connection to Stormlight. So I looked something up in Stormlight, which spoiled me for the Hero of Ages. So if you're reading The Well of Ascension for the first time, don't look anything up because you will be spoiled. But that being said, this kind of leans into plot a little bit. But just reading the character struggles and the choices they were facing and all the things that were happening to them, I had no idea where this book was going. I think you already said that earlier. But there was, I personally, when I was pitched this trilogy, I assumed the Lord Ruler was going to be the main antagonist for the whole 3 books.
Yeah.
So after he died in the first one, I was like, oh, shoot, what happens next? What is the story?
It's a power
So
vacuum.
reading this
Yeah.
book, very, very interesting, seeing the aftermath of the Lord Ruler's collapse. Such a fascinating idea. It's such a simple question too, but it's such a fascinating way, the way that Sanderson explores it.
So
But before we
go
move
on,
into
oh, I was also gonna say before we move on. No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
no, okay. What do you think of Zane?
Okay, I was gonna ask the same thing. That's crazy. So Zane, it was difficult for me because it seemed so obvious what the right choice for Vin was. And possibly that's just because we have Ellen's mind, so we know how good of a guy he is. I very much enjoyed that scene where they both went to Sazed and were like asking relationship advice right after each other. That was such a cute scene. It was really wholesome. Whatever, Vin was like, I don't know what to do. And then And then Ellen was like, "I don't know what to do." And then he was having to deal with that. That was really funny, but it's kind of hard because Ellen is so clearly the better brother. Like he's so clearly the better man, the better choice. Vin has a correct option and an objectively wrong option, is what it felt like, and it would have been more interesting for him to, I think, play closer to the middle. I always felt like he was always not good. Like I understood, I liked the intriguing point of God trying to tell him to kill people. Like that was a really a very interesting element that added some flavor to his character and made it feel like a serious internal struggle for him to try and do the right thing. But I respected Sanderson's choice to allow him to like hinge all of his goodness on Vin. And the fact that Vin didn't choose him meant he wasn't allowed to be a good person. I thought that was an interesting character choice. I very much liked that. I saw it coming. I expected it. I didn't expect him to stab her. Like that was that was a really intense scene. And I absolutely did not expect that Orsur was the I mean, we already knew he was a conjurer, but I didn't think he was the conjurer of the conjurer. Did not see that coming. Very good
That
reveal.
one got me too. That one got me
Yes.
too. That was a good
I
reveal.
who was it? Tensoon. Tensoon. It was replaced by Tensoon. The Conjure angle, huge surprise, interesting group that we got to see a little bit of in the first book. That absolutely is a much bigger focus here, and I'm sure we'll get a lot more in the next book. But yeah, it was interesting to see the mechanics of the Conjure, the culture, the rules. That was a satisfying reveal. Zane was fine. I would say that. I was interested. I enjoyed having chapters from his perspective because of how different he is and how much he contrasts with the rest of the characters. Yet, I never once rooted for him, never once felt. Honestly, this is probably bad to say. I never felt a whole lot of empathy for him, and felt kind of wrong to say that, but he also lets himself be bullied a little bit. His father's evil. Like we know that. Of course he is. And I also really liked having his perspective as well on some things. His father's very clearly evil. And I guess I understand him being like, yeah, but he's my father. I'm not going to kill him. I just would have liked a little more fight from him, a little bit more of a struggle to be good before he fell. But overall, fine character. Not my favorite, but fine. What did you think?
Yeah, I don't know. He started off really strong when he was this mysterious figure kind of watching over Finn and all the sparing and all the chasing after each other. That was interesting. The god speaking to him was also interesting, but I didn't really feel much for him either. I didn't really care about him after a while. I like the way you said it, he is kind of objectively the wrong choice for Vin. And it did seem illogical for her to give everything up just for this guy.
Yeah, I didn't
Like,
know
I
that
get
his argument didn't make a whole like I understand the whole like you're a knife thing and you don't want to be a knife, yet the that being the only argument felt kind of weak of a justification for her to give everything up.
and, hypocritical too, because she's being a tool used by Ellen and all these people, and yet he is also kind of using her as an
Or yeah.
excuse, like, hey, if you go with me, you're saving me. You chose
That's
to
so
stay.
toxic.
You're not saving me. Now I have to kill you.
I
Now I
have to
have to
get
do
it.
this.
I
I
liked
have
how
to do
toxic
this.
that is. That I kind of enjoyed how like toxic because there's so many characters are really good people in this book, or really really bad people, and so oh my gosh, he's a really bad boyfriend, bro. He's so it's crazy. So out of all of the new characters, so this would be the Set family. I would include kind of Orsur slash Tensoon in there as well. And I mean, who else do we have? We have Tindwyl. Tindwyl is a great new character.
Tind-
Who and Zane, Tindwyl, is that who stood out for you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. She was,
Yeah,
I
me
mean,
too.
out of the new characters anyway, she was a lot
Yes.
more realistic in a way. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I enjoyed the way she was very different toward each of the characters she interacted with, right? She was really kind to Vin. She was really harsh to Ellen. And she had this messy, almost frustrating affection towards Aesop, right? Her love for him. Um, Frustrated because of, he is a very not submissive. Submissive is not the right word because it is defiant, right? He is a rebel,
Yeah.
and he constantly defied his culture, his people, and the keepers. And yet he's very complacent and submissive. I guess peaceful is the right word. He's very peaceful when interacting with his friends. And so whenever they called him out, whenever she called him out on his, his BS, he would be like, "No, you're right, you're right." And that would frustrate her. I thought that was really interesting. Really, it's one of those like personality traits that you can see in people here in the real world, and he doesn't feel so far detached in a way that I can't really explain. But yeah, she was a really great character. Her romance with Sazed was amazing, and her death. I mean, her death wasn't impactful because we didn't really get to see it, but it was
Yeah.
impactful in the sense of what it's gonna do to Sazed moving forward.
I
Like, I didn't
agree.
feel sad that Tindril died. I felt sad for Sazed that Tindril died, if that makes sense.
Yes, I agree. I kind of wish we got to see her die. I mean, perhaps it's the point that we don't see her die. I'm also very skeptical always in books and media when we don't see a character die, we don't see the body. Like we didn't get to see the body, right? I don't remember.
No. No,
Yeah, I'm
we
just
do, we
really
do.
skeptical. We do? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sazed
I remember
searches
it.
for the corpse. Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible. Yeah, I felt bad for Zayzed very much, but I also just I felt the same way. We didn't see the circumstances of her death. That would have been very satisfying. Um, yeah, because
How
I
did you
really connected with
feel,
her.
speaking of deaths, how did you feel about Kelsier's crew members dying? Because we had
I
2 members that died.
Yeah, I kind of liked how quick it was, to be honest. I was like, "Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's gone." I mean, they weren't my most beloved. Like I'm assuming probably I feel like Ham's gonna die. I'll be sad when he dies, or Breeze. I'll be sad when he dies. I didn't necessarily have as much of a connection to clubs. I kind of felt like Sanderson. This was maybe a moment I kind of got taken out of the world a little bit because Clubs got a really emotional scene right before the battle, and immediately in my head I went, "Oh, this is Sanderson trying to build empathy for him right before he dies." So I immediately clocked that and went, "Check, okay," because to me it seemed very obvious that right before the big battle scene, you're going to all of a sudden have the character who hasn't had much softness. He's going to have this moment
Yeah.
of like,
I can see
opening
how
up
you
his
would
heart.
notice that specifically because you did the same thing in the best.
Shut up, shut up. No
But I
spoilers,
guess
no
we'll talk
spoilers.
about this
Yeah,
episode.
we'll talk about the
But
Bastion next episode. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I immediately clocked that though, and I was like, I see what you're doing. You're not it's not gonna work on me. So I immediately put up my emotional barrier and refused to connect to him. And but I mean he's fine. I didn't feel much for when they died. I went, like that's cool, which is probably a weird reaction, but I
yeah,
love whenever characters die. I feel like we've gone over this a lot. I really love a good character death. Make me feel something, ruin the other characters. I want to see how it impacts everybody. And a battle like this should cost something. I fundamentally should cost them something. And sometimes Sanderson or other authors don't don't let big battles or big moments mean anything. Like nobody dies, everybody ends up okay, there's a happy ending. And I hate that. I love a happy ending, but I don't like it whenever it feels too easy. It feels convenient as if the author isn't willing to kind of take that burden on. So I 100% appreciated their deaths.
well, that's why you should read Rhythm of War and Wind and Truth.
You're right,
I'm
dude.
just saying, Sanderson didn't do anything here, but he definitely might, potentially, perhaps.
Uh
No, but that actually speaks to one of my few gripes with this book, which is, yeah, I mean, the deaths were cool. I enjoyed how quick they were.
yeah.
Same with Kelsey's death. I had to kind of reread the page again to make sure that he actually did die.
Yeah, I didn't think he was dead at first, but
And it
right.
happened so quickly.
Yeah.
And it was the same with clubs. It was the same with stocks in. But I just didn't feel anything as much, or not as much as I maybe should have, right? And that's one of my gripes is that one of the plot lines in this book was that one of the crew members was an imposter. And Vin occasionally mentions how she doesn't want to deal with this problem because it would mean that one of her friends is dead.
Yeah.
But it felt like one of those things where we're being told that that's how she feels, and it's not quite explored, especially when the first book is all about trust. This one was about trust in a different way, but I felt like this could have been explored a little bit more. you know I understand there were like bigger world ending issues to consider, and there was a lot more going on in this book, but like on a personal level I felt like that was a little underdeveloped. She quickly kind of triggers her crew members' almancy so that she can tell that they're, not the imposter and all that. But, there's not I mean, I felt
Yeah,
like
I
that was a
agree.
really good opportunity to kind of further develop these characters and their relationship with them, especially seeing a bit of how they feel after Kelsier died. If it was this impactful for Vin, uh, it was definitely more impactful for them. And we caught glimpses here and there, but it's a minor gripe, but I wish we could have seen that
I
a little bit more.
I do agree. We get um not very much of that. It feels like a pit stop every once in a while of like, oh yeah, we got to address this problem. However, I loved that there were so many problems. So that gets into plot for me. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I much preferred this one to the last one in that the plot was awesome, yet also the last plot pretty much all hinged on Kelsier just being boss and like destroying everything and being really cool and competent. Whereas this one, it was like, oh my gosh, the problems stacked higher and higher, and it very much succeeded in every time it felt like they might take a step forward. They have to take a few steps back because horrible things happen. My jaw dropped whenever Set ended up going into the council chamber and putting himself electing to be king. He was like he was electing himself to be king. That was such a baller moment. I really, really liked the political intrigue in this and the maneuvering that had to go on. I thought that was really satisfying, and how he was so dedicated to his morals that he was willing to kind of put up with the political machinations that a lot of his rivals that he helped give power by, creating this government, how they were taking advantage of that. And it felt very realistic and really interesting. And I very much was satisfied by the fact that there was no real answer to their inability to basically like dig down and try and figure out a solution, but everybody wanted to just give up. And I loved that. I loved that they wouldn't let them give up. But you also saw the repercussions of their actions. You saw the people getting angry in the streets, feeling hopeless. You saw the armies. I very much just enjoyed how things felt like they got worse and worse and worse. I saw some things coming from a good amount out, like I don't remember the army's name, the big bad guys that were kind of introduced that felt a little bit horned in.
The Colors.
Yeah, the Kolos.
The
I was a
Colos,
little.
yeah.
I didn't love that inclusion. Like this will get into world. The world, I think, took a little bit of a dip compared to the first one for me, but there was just so much going on, and I very much appreciated it. And it resolved in a overall satisfying manner. The thing that would have brought it to a 10, I guess I got like two things. First of all, it did feel like a lot of the book was stuck in the same space, like physical space, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I kind of enjoyed the feeling of a siege throughout the whole book. Yet also, I would have liked more jaw-dropping events like Set showing up, and I think that could have been done better. There could have been more intense twists and turns. And then number two, I wasn't necessarily fully convinced by Vin showing up so soon to the castle. I mean, to the city. It was a little bit convenient timing, and her figuring everything out was a little bit convenient. There was just a few things that, like her connecting the dots to kill the Lord Ruler. worked. It was satisfying. It felt grounded. It didn't feel convenient. I did feel that some of her conclusions and her figuring out that you can control the whatchamacallem, the big guys. I forgot their names again.
The Colos.
Kolos, yes. The Kolos. She was able to control the Kolos, in the same way through Allomancy. I guess, yeah. It just felt a little, I don't know, a little convenient timing. But those are my only two gripes. I I really prefer this plot to the first one. Nor, what do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree?
I agree. My score is an 8.5, which I'm pretty sure is the same as the one for Mistborn, the
Yeah.
Final Empire, the first book. Um, but for different reasons, this I like this one more. I think it was a lot more interesting. Um, the whole siege thing was really claustrophobic, and it felt claustrophobic. Like I felt that we were all confined to the city. There was like no way out, and it did feel like there was no hope. I mean, there were so many problems, so many complications, really, really overwhelming, and the way that things just kept getting worse was really satisfying, really pushing our characters to their limits in a way, and to keeping their integrity, especially Ellen, particularly him. My biggest gripe, I think, I already mentioned it, the whole imposter thing. I wish they had done a little bit more than with that. It felt underdeveloped. Same with whatever was happening with Zane. I mean, you know, he dies at the very end, and God whispers in his ear, like, what's crazy? The craziest part of all of this? You were never insane. That was cool. That was cool. You know, that was wicked. But he also felt in many ways kind of shoehorned in a little bit. Like, I could see where Sanderson was going with him. I guess this is more of a character flaw because he felt underdeveloped. Oh, I really enjoyed that there were so many things going on. Once more, Vin did feel a little too competent, but I guess it kind of works with the whole, is she the hero of ages? Is she like hero that's gonna save them all from the deepness? I really enjoyed Sazed's storyline trying to uncover that secret. But yeah, I don't know. Really strong plot. It just could have been a little bit more, if that makes any sense. But still very enjoyable, and I
Yeah.
definitely did like it a lot more than the first one. Even though the first one is great in its own right. This is just
You know what?
a lot more intriguing.
What scene really stood out to me was the scene where Vin joins Zane to like slaughter like 50, 60 people, like slaughter to the people. And then they get to set and they're like, wait, you don't have a Mistborn? And she decides not to like murder him. That was such an interesting scene. To like, she felt like Kelsier in the first book. That first fight scene with Kelsier where we see him go on a mission and just like destroy everyone. He uses Allomancy, kills so many people, then leaves. That's what it felt like. It felt like she was dipping into Kelsier's territory, and I thought that was a good addition to her character. I like how unconcerned she is with morals. And that sounds weird. I typically like that sort of depth. I like the impact that you get by asking deep moral questions, but I also like the simplicity in how she views herself and views her role, and how I'm sure that changes over time and what she prioritizes. You can see the scale. I mean, like she prioritizes the people around her. She prioritizes what she sees as her family. She does not prioritize the entire kingdom. She prioritizes the world, yeah, like, but that's kind of fair. Yet she doesn't think about the repercussions in the same way that Ellen does. And they're so fundamentally different as people, yet they also love each other and it feels very real. I really liked how messy their relationship was. And that's more characters, I guess. But yeah, no, I was a huge fan of it. I understand what you're saying with the whole imposter plot. I was shocked by the reveal. Like I think it was a good reveal. Yet I also think it would have been very interesting if it would have actually been someone close to her. But then again, I'm not sure if I would want that as much. Like I don't know. Would it be interesting if Ham turned out to be the imposter. I don't know. I think it was more the
Yeah,
fear. I think you're right. It would have been if it was better developed, the fear of it happening is more significant than it actually happening. And
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so I think it worked having basically her confidant for the book, who she's really seeking to understand, be the imposter was well done. And it was also very genuine. Like I felt bad for the for dog for Tensoon. Yeah, Tensoon.
Tensoon, yeah.
I felt bad for the Kandra. Like it didn't feel like he wanted to portray her, and it was well portrayed, I think is the best way to put it. It felt like they are truly chained to the contract, and yeah, I don't know, it felt
And
painful,
yet
and that was good.
he does break the contract at the end to
Yes,
save her
that's a good
life,
point.
which is
That's
a
a good point.
really, really satisfying moment. He was becoming one of my most likable characters in the book. He was really interesting,
I agree. And, this
really
takes us
enjoyable.
to the world. This is maybe unfair, right? I might be coming at it from an unfair perspective. So I listened to most of the book. I read some of it, listened to some of it. And so I was never really paying attention to the map, which has, I think, a lot to do with how you feel about a world. Because Roshar, I can picture quite vividly. Like I know where places are. I understand the look of the terrain. I understand where everything is in location to each other. With Stormlight, right? I don't feel the same way about Mistborn. Part of it is because of the claustrophobia. Like we don't go out and see many cultures. It feels very insular and it feels intimate. And it feels like this is what there is compared to the shock and awe of the world in the first book that I felt. I didn't get that same feeling here. At times I felt like things were added that I would have preferred to hear about in the first book. Maybe I did. Maybe the Kolos are in the first book and I just missed it. That's very possible. But like I felt like that would have been significant. That would have been a significant thing to note in whenever you're talking about taking over the Lord Ruler. Like that could have been an opportunity if you can figure out to utilize that army. Maybe you can take over the Lord Ruler. But that just it wasn't a conversation, and so some stuff kind of felt thrown in, and I still don't fully grasp the scale of the empire or the differences in the empire. There are different like geographical landscapes. I don't know. I was having trouble visualizing other places besides our central city, which was really good. Like I the immediate world was excellent, but this didn't do a great job for me of expanding it that significantly. Lore, yeah, there's extra lore, but I wasn't super satisfied with that part. So I gave it an 8 I gave it an what did I give it? Sorry, 8.5 I think. Yeah. I gave it an 8.5. Still really good. Like it benefits from everything from the first book, but to get to a 9, I think it needed to expand a bit more. It needed to give me a little bit more. So that's a gist of how I felt, Nor. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. For me, I mean, I definitely agree with that point. The world itself still felt very empty outside of the city. I mean, the way I pictured most of the scenes outside of Luthadel were just empty fields, an empty road, and there wasn't really anything going on. You hear about this dominance, but it's all just kind of empty and hollow, which, I guess I'm not surprised there isn't much of a culture since the Lord Ruler kind of made sure there wasn't any.
That's a good point.
But even so, we got a lot more culture in the first book with the way the nobility works, the way the ska work, the way there's different ska. You have the plantation ones and the ones in the city, the thieves, the nobility, the allomancers, and the inquisitors and the obligators and all that. There was a lot more culture in the first book. I think you're right. Not so much in this one. The reason I gave it a 9 out of 10 is because of the whole prophecy, the lore behind that. To me, felt a lot more interesting. I mean, I'm still kind of a sucker for, end of the world prophecies and the chosen one and all that.
Yeah.
In a way that I didn't realize I was, I guess I just haven't read a book that even mentions something like the chosen one in so long. I mean, I think the last book I read with a chosen one was probably Percy Jackson when I was a kid. It's one of
Yeah.
those things that is so common as a kid growing up, and yet the older you get, the more kind of elevated the books become, and so they start to challenge those things. So it was nice to kind of read this book, which is still elevated. It's not necessarily as simple as, Vint is the chosen one and she's gonna save the world. That's on the back burner. Like, that's not the main focus of this book at all. Even so, seeing those little glimpses into what the Well of Ascension is, and what the prophecy is, and why the hero of ages must not reach the Well of Ascension. I mean, the whole idea of this prophecy being a lie
Mm.
by this god. I don't know if they name drop him. I don't know if
I
they
don't think they do. I know who it is,
okay.
but
Yeah,
I
I know
wouldn't
who it
name
is
drop.
too, but I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah.
But it's the type of thing that I'm reading and I'm flipping the pages and I'm like really consumed by it. I went back and like kind of reread the whole like intros. I forget what they're called.
The
But
epitaphs.
yeah, the epithets, yeah. And like coming to the same realization as they said, like, oh, this is a lie. And the whole connection to the very first line, that I write these words in steel, for anything that is not written in steel cannot be trusted. I was so confused by that line when I first read it, and it is such a satisfying like
I
realization.
didn't I didn't put that together. That's literally the first line of the book. Okay, that is really cool. No,
I was like,
I
that
gotta
doesn't make
give it to him.
sense. So
So
that got me. That got me.
that is definitely something you lose out on through the audio. Is the epitaphs are there, yet they don't feel as monumental. Like they're not physically separated. And so I think whenever you're reading on the page, you're able to, especially reading Mistborn after book one, you're paying attention. Like you are reading those and paying attention to that story. And you lose a little bit of that through the audio version, I think. So I would say that if you're wondering whether or not to read or listen to this one, I would recommend reading it. The voice acting is great. Like the audio experience is very nice, but you lose out on, I mean, obviously if you're listening to this, you probably have already read it, but if you're reading it again, I'd suggest physically reading it, because that's a significant point. Because I will say that in this book, I mean, this also is a difference of personality, right? I think I'm much more interested in the political intrigue and the like that sort of plot line compared to the prophecy and the lore. I'm not as much of a lore guy. Not that I'm very much interested in it. Like I thought it was really cool that whole switch around. Like I was down for it. That definitely is my least favorite part of the books. I care the least about the lore drops, and my brain my eyes kind of glaze over, and I get through them because I know they're important, but I prefer the other parts. But I would say, um, I think you said an interesting point about the whole chosen one thing, because you're right. I haven't read very many chosen ones recently. I wonder if this was like really oversaturated back in the day, and so then all of a sudden everybody stopped writing chosen one narratives, and then all of a sudden now it starts to feel fresh again. Because I don't think it's only like young adult books or kids books. I think in general, the chosen one narrative was really dominant in, I mean, especially the 20th century, right? Like I'm not sure. I don't have exact cutoff period of whenever it stopped being popular, but I would definitely say like he's for sure it was still a thing. But once we get to 2010s, especially in 2000s, it's not as much of a thing. Like I haven't I agree. I haven't really read any chosen one narratives, and I haven't really considered the fact that that is kind of interesting now. Like we haven't really been there too much. And so no, that I do like how it's turned on its head though, how it feels very different. And I was very much satisfied by the fact that they weren't that this whole thing was a lie. The religion was a lie. The stories he was telling was a lie. Very, very interesting. And that kind of goes into Impact, right? Because this big reveal, nor how did you rate Impact, and how specifically did that reveal or reveals like it impact you as a reader? Did it leave you with any big questions or anything that was actually thought provoking?
And I kept the same score as I did for the Final Empire. And I think it's because I already read Stormlight. And so the idea of a character struggling with being a king and being a good king and, having honor, that is a big part of one of the characters in Stormlight, and I think
Stormlight does it better.
yeah, I think Stormlight obviously does it better. It's a different
Different.
type
You're
of
right.
it's a very different type of journey, granted.
Yes. Yes.
It's just, when it comes to the idea of like a king trying to do the right thing and maintain his integrity or change from his past, I think it was done a lot better in Stormlight. That's where I got the impact from. Here, I really enjoyed it. I really empathized with Ellen, and I really was rooting for him the whole time, even though it felt like there was no way out without sacrificing your integrity. I felt desperate for him in those moments, especially any scene in the assembly, just
Yeah.
because of how realistic it was. Yeah, this is such a good system in theory, but people have their own motivations. I mean, I even think he mentions that explicitly. I put all these people in charge, but they all have their own motives, their own reasons, their own philosophies. I just guess I didn't think they were going to contradict mine. I think that's one of the lines in the book. That was done really well. It was really thought provoking in
Yeah,
that
'cause you know
way.
what? The biggest takeaway from this book is that democracy is a cancer and that we shouldn't allow such things to exist. Emperors only. Emperors. Only good
Emperors
emperors.
only.
All we need to do, well, we need to hold an election. Never mind. No
Hashtag the
election
Lord
for
Ruler
long.
was right.
Power. Hashtag Lord Ruler was right. We can only rule via emperor or else things don't get done because everybody wants to hurt each other. That's my biggest takeaway from the book. That's why I also gave it an 8 out of 10. Uh, Democracy is a cancer, and we shouldn't have. Joking. That's not actually my takeaway, but I had much the same opinion as you. I cared about the characters, most of the characters. I cared about what was going on. I was invested, and that's the sign of a good book. I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to be pondering this book for the next like couple weeks in the same sense that I did with like Will of the Many, for example. Um, there weren't super deep questions that left me like truly considering because most of Vin's concerns, most of her questions are answered by reading Ellen's perspective. Does he love me? Does he think I'm a monster? Cut to him being like, I love her. I can't believe she's so powerful. That's
She's
so
not a
cool.
monster.
She's absolutely beautiful. Like or him knowing that she wants to there was a lot of really cute moments between the two of them that were done really well. And as a person who doesn't really like read romance, I mean we tried and it wasn't our thing. This was a killer romance. I gotta say, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I think that this romance I might prefer to any of them in Stormlight. I think. Like actual like cute romance part. Obviously I think that there are
Yes.
like deeper
I
moments,
think that's a pretty safe bet.
but the like cuteness of him knowing in the midst of just horrible situations that he needs to recognize that she's wearing a new perfume is like really funny. And him even trying whenever it's actually just the smell of dog is so good. So I really enjoyed that aspect of their relationship, just those small kind of situations that people get into whenever they're in a relationship that is like it feels like something you're supposed to do because you want to love the other person well, and he does that really well in this book. Anyways, yeah, Impact, I gave an 8 out of 10. I thought it was good, but the final, like, one that is kind of just is the same as the last book. Well, it might be a little bit better actually, thinking about it, like, seriously. The style is a little bit better than Mistborn: The Final Empire. It doesn't have the same clunkiness at the beginning of the book. Because I felt that I think both felt that in The Final Empire, the beginning of the book had some kind of wooden dialogue. It just wasn't filled with very much character. It was kind of amateurish. This didn't have that. Yet it still suffers from, I think, the same just plainness. It's just plain. It isn't bad. It's not bad. There's just a lack of descriptions in places where I might want it that could flesh out the world a little bit more. If I can imagine what the road looks like beyond just emptiness, because I agree with you. One of my biggest problems with the world is it feels so empty. Besides Luthadel, Luthadel seems like the world, and we hear about other
And
places
even
getting
then,
pillaged.
yeah, and even then, Luthadel is still very
plain.
kind of plain. You know, like
Yeah.
there's clear images of, you know, this huge city and the house venture or keep venture, whatever they call it.
We don't get a lot of descriptions though of
Like
like what
Credit
things look like.
Shaw, but not really, you know, yeah. Like you have the idea, the vague idea, and I think a lot of it is you filling in the gaps for Sanderson, which is not really why you read a Sanderson book.
Yeah.
But yeah, the prose is still the same. It's very simple. I got the gist of it, you know, the vivid imagery just wasn't there. The character development, the feelings, the thoughts, the emotions, that was there. But not at the same level as he eventually gets to with Stormlight, of course. Which, you know, makes sense because these books came out earlier than Stormlight. But yeah,
I
you know,
really
seven
am.
point five for me.
Yeah. 7.5 I think is a fair rating. I really am interested in he has his other trilogies, right? Cuz this is just era 1 and there's time jumps between like the next eras. He's working on Ghost Bloods right now, which is I guess the latest era. Like I think it's modern times, maybe near future. I'm not sure. But you see like significant time jumps in the first trilogy versus the second versus the third and so on. And I'm interested to see how he world builds differently because you kind of have to start from scratch. Like, is by the modern times Luthadel still Luthadel, or because realistically, you know, it number one expands a lot, obviously, but there are like some buildings that stick around and look ancient, yet there are places around it. Like that's how cities work. It's not like you completely build on top of the old city. A lot of times you'll still have buildings from the old city still there. So I'm I'm not sure when I will get to read those later trilogies, but that's something that I definitely want to see how he deals with it. Um, that and obviously guns. You always wonder about guns. Guns and fantasy is always interesting. So, what's the point of Alamancy when you got guns? Like, are they? I'm pretty sure he has guns in the later books. And like, what do you do whenever you can just stop the bullet midair because you're an Alamancer? Guess we'll find out by the end of this trilogy. Okay, prediction time. Prediction. I wonder if Alamancy is going to be like gone by the end of this trilogy. If it's going to be like, you know, the magic is vanished. The mists are no more, right? I guess the second trilogy is it also called Mistborn? This could be kind of weird.
All I know is that they're all I know is that they're called the Wax and Wayne series. I have no idea what that means. I'm guessing those are the two characters, two protagonists. Um, I couldn't tell you.
But yeah, that's my prediction. Is like I could see if guns do develop and stuff, he might justify it by Alamancy kind of disappearing or going away, so that whenever it pops up again in the second trilogy, it's like surprising and like, dang, you can stop bullets. I don't know. That's my prediction. After they
Do
kill
wonder.
God, they're gonna. I don't know though. I don't know. I'm really excited. I'm very interested to see what happens, and I hope in the next book we get to move out of Luthadel. That's my hope. I like Luthadel. We got some good stuff going on, but give me a little something else. Give me a little something else.
I wonder. I'm not very good at predicting stuff, but
I mean, I'm probably not either.
I
We'll
don't know.
see. We'll
I don't
find
know.
out.
I don't know though. You've been pretty good at predictions
Sorry,
ever since we
it's
started
true.
this podcast.
When,
You've gotten like
whenever we
maybe
did,
like 20% of them, which is more than I have.
I,
That's pretty good. That's a
well,
pretty good
whenever
rate.
you sit there thinking about the book for hours and hours and hours, and you come up with, you're able to figure some things out. But I think that's my main prediction. We should probably mention our subjective rating scale, right? Where would this fall? You know, is this an ebook? Is this a PDF? Is this paperback, hardcover collector's edition? There's our whole subjective scale, our whole ranking collage. So where would this fall? I mean, I had it the same as the last one. Are you in the same place?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, hardcover.
Hardcover. It's a
It's a
hardcover.
classic hardcover. It's a classic hardcover.
I would like it on up on my shelf. I wish I had gotten the cooler covers,
But you
which
got
you
the
know
you got the cheap
I got
like
the
small
really
paperback.
cheap one, the one with like nondescript
I got the
objects
slightly better
instead
one.
of people on the covers.
I got this
Yeah,
one.
that one's like slightly better. There's another
It's
one though.
slightly
There's
better.
another one, and that one's
Are you talking about the
so
white one?
pretty.
Are you talking about the
Not the
white
white
one?
one, not the white one. I think that one's
Quite,
too stylistic.
quite
It's the
too
one.
stylistic.
It's the one with Vin kind of leaping over a building, and there's a
Yeah,
bunch
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
Inquisitors chasing after her. It
Yeah.
looks almost like biblical, and it looks
Yeah. No,
so cool. But I
we
haven't
have to talk
seen
about.
that anywhere.
We forgot to talk about Marsh. We should probably
Marsh
okay.
is the coolest character, and he shows up and then he disappears, and it frustrated me so much because I wanted to see more of Marsh, and then he shows up at the end, and then he
He just tries
vanishes
to kill
again.
Sazed. He just tries to murder Sazed.
And I'm
I was
so excited to see where it goes.
yeah, we'll see
I
more of
mean,
him, I'm
why were
sure.
they killing the terrorist man?
We'll
I
find
need to
out.
know.
Yeah, we will find out. And I think that Marsh is not a character that I can accurately judge or give any sort of real comment on until we read book 3. And I guess that's not next. We have next is
No,
the
you would
Bastion,
think it's
but
next.
after that, after the Bastion, which is next episode, we will dive into the Hero of Ages. Mark your calendars. 4 weeks from today, we will be reviewing the Hero of Ages. So get your copy. Go read along with us. But Nor, have you finished your
And
beverage? We should probably mention that.
I
Did
haven't.
you finished your whole? You have it? Go ahead.
No, I haven't.
Wow, it's good. Did you just get closer to the mic to make sure everybody can hear you drink it? That's so disturbing. It's so gross. Because here at Novels and Nightcaps, we finish our drinks. Everybody, have a good night.